So first of all, it's a good thing. Anger is not bad. Okay. It's a part of us that makes us want to protect ourselves. It's part of our instinct. Often we don't choose it. We're not like, I think I'm going to be mad now. No, it just happens. Right. And it wants that piece of us wants to protect us, keep us safe, and get rid of any threats. When that emotion does come on, it triggers our fight or flight response. And our fight or flight response changes our body. We start getting stress hormones. We get adrenaline, cortisol, testosterone, because our body's preparing us to fight, like literally. The same physiology that would take place if I had to fight an intruder in my home is the same thing that happens when anger kicks on my fight or flight. The same exact things happen inside the body. And the thing is when you haven't undergone trauma, the way the brain works is the emotion can kick on without our conscious consent. But then the other part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, that's our thinking brain, our logical brain, the CEO of our brain, usually will evaluate and be like, okay, you're angry, but let's not punch a hole through the wall, Michelle. Or you're angry, but now's not the time or place. So the anger comes on and our prefrontal cortex works to keep it in check. The problem is when you've been through trauma, that relationship has been severed. The prefrontal cortex, the emotions that are there, or the emotions in our survival brain, in our limbic network, have been overworked. So they're like a muscle. Our amygdala is like a muscle that's overworked. If I overwork the front of my arm and not the back of my arm, I have a big muscle, weak muscle. Well, that's what happens with our brain. Our amygdalas actually changes size. It's actually larger. Our hippocampus is smaller because of trauma. And so that switch to calm down the anger is affected. So for anyone that feels like, why can't I stop being angry? I know, and I should let it go. And this was decades ago. There's also this biological part that's important to understand. It's not because you're not trying to apply. It's not because you don't understand. It's because the brain has changed. So anger, right, has its preparation phase, which gets all that. Those hormones are designed to mobilize us to fight. It should also have a wind down phase. Whenever we realize that the person or the situation is no longer accessible, or it's no longer even in the present, like normally, anger would calm down. The problem, again, with narcissistic abuse and often trauma is we get stuck in ruminating. We get stuck in thinking about the situation in a way that kicks on the same stress hormones as if the threat is still there. Again, even if you've been out of the situation for a long time. And then because we wind up in these situations where our anger is constantly getting turned on, right? So let's imagine like a narcissist, you're in the relationship, whether it's a parent relationship, a work relationship, or a significant other, and you're constantly being provoked to anger. What happens is it lowers our anger threshold. I can't tell you how many people, myself included, said that I used to be the calmest person. And then after a narcissistic relationship, what's up with that quick fuse? Well, because the more your body is in an emotional state, the easier it is to be in it. The less your body's in an emotional state, the harder it is to be in. And then our brain, because it likes to conserve energy, it sees the emotional states that we're in a lot, and then it memorizes the chemical signature of that emotional state. And then it tries to help us by giving it to us more often. And that's what's known as a trauma loop. So for example, let's say in the narcissistic relationship, every morning I used to be a happy person, but narcissists hate to see you happy. So every morning something bad would happen. And so I learned I was no longer happy in the mornings. I was angry or irritated. right? But then you leave the narcissistic relationship, and guess what happens for your mornings? You're still angry and irritated, even though the situation has changed. And the reason is because your body's like, okay, Michelle, it's 7 o'clock. This is the time you wake up. 7:05. This is the time you get angry. So let me help you out. Let me give you some stress hormones. There, you're doing it. This is what we've been doing for a long time. So then I'm like, I feel the anger. And then my brain looks for a reason. And I'll ask myself, well, why am I so angry? And the subconscious mind loves that question. Like when we talk about that question, the why with affirmations, it's because it really does work. If we ask our brain why something, it goes into action to try to give us reasons. So the anger comes up automatically. My brain is like, oh, I see that in my body. Why am I angry? And the subconscious is like, oh, well, let me tell you. Remember this and this and this and this and this. This is why. And then I'm remembering, I'm ruminating over what happened. Guess what's happening? I'm getting more angry. Thoughts, feelings are pinging off of each other, stuck in what's known as a trauma loop.